prayer is critical. I mean, it is God's first weapon. And so should be where we start. It just shouldn't be where we end.
The mission we're involved in is a circle. It's not an us and them. We give to them, but they bring their faith stories back to us and strengthen the faith life of us in Norway and hopefully the American church as well. And so prayer connects us together, because while they ask us to pray for them, I always ask the same, pray for us. We aren't suffering persecution in the American church or the Norwegian church, but we definitely are suffering because of affluence, because we have too much and we think we need more. Pray for us that we hold on to our faith in the midst of that affluence. We'll pray for your faith in the midst of persecution. You pray for our faith in the midst of our affluence, that we'll hold on to our faith. Prayer is important.
Prayer is part of a discernment process of where God is calling us. We ask God, where are you calling us? How can we align with your calling and with your mission when it comes to fighting persecution? That is one of the importance of prayer, but also praying for the persecuted, of course, and praying with them, not just for them, but with them, so that the persecution does not hinder the gospel message.
Prayer is important because many of the situations are impossible. We look at countries like Colombia that's known like 4 years of peace and all of its history as a country. We look at a place like North Korea, which for past decades has been under a extremely oppressive government, the kind of that's very difficult to imagine, and shows no sign of crumbling or weakening. And so we bring those things before God because they're things that we can't change, and we don't necessarily see change, and their political paths often are not. In some places they're helpful, in some cases they don't seem to be doing anything at all. And so we go to a God who can do impossible things, and we bring these things before him. I also would say that everywhere I've gone, and in these 25 years I've traveled to a lot of places, and I've had the blessing to meet many of these people face to face and to hear their stories. When we talk to them and we tell them who we are and what we do, and we will say, what can we do to help you? The first thing every single time is please pray for us. I think for us it can seem distant. You're praying for somebody who you don't know in a country you've never been to, maybe never will go to, a person you're never going to see in this life. But on the opposite side of that, they do feel those prayers, and it's hard. I think it's hard to express the passion with which they have said this. And then we've gone back to see them, and they said, I was in the situation and I felt people praying for me. I was in prison and I was really depressed, and all of a sudden I had the supernatural experience. We had a case of a pastor who was assassinated by the FARC guerrilla group in front of his wife and children. They had to flee and go into hiding, and she talked about a very dark period where they were in hiding. She was with her 2 kids who had just witnessed the murder of their father, and she got to a point where she didn't feel she could go on, and suddenly she said she was talking about a specific moment in time where she felt like a spiritual refreshment, and she knew people were praying for her. I think one day you will get to hear those stories from those people in eternity. But for the moment, we can relay to you from those of us who have met them that they do make a difference, and they do feel them.